Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's fucking go. Check 1 2. Check. Test. Testicles. Hi, everybody. Nice to be here. Dude, thank you. Before we start this podcast, thank you for sending me... Oh, fuck off.
What'd you do?
Thank you. I don't know. We got issues. Anyway, thank you, Lock and Cross, for sending me the Deadpool trailer. Deadpool Wolverine.
Oh, did you
trailer.
watch it?
Oh my God. As soon as you sent it.
Yeah.
As soon as you sent it. I have a problem with Deadpool movies. Anytime it's on, I'll watch the whole thing. If I'm sad, I'll turn on Deadpool.
I love Deadpool.
I cannot get enough of Deadpool. Anything Deadpool. Deadpool 1, Deadpool 2, Deadpool Wolverine is coming out. Ryan Reynolds, Hugh Jackman, you sent me the trailer. It looks
so good.
Oh.
You have a man crush on Ryan Reynolds, don't you?
And Hugh Jackman. Yeah, I got a man crush on both those guys. I'm like, two of the fucking coolest guys ever. I don't have like a romantic man crush on those guys, but like if you're a dude and you see two dudes like that, jacked,
just
killing it, you're like, how do you not want to be those guys? Just for a couple afternoons, right? Filming Deadpool Wolverine.
I don't need
maybe
to be them.
spending
I'd
some
love
money.
to hang out.
Just with Ryan Reynolds. I'd love to hang out on the set because like they like each other, but the fucking trailer, we can't play the trailer, but it will be posted at Crime Media, so you can go and have a look at it. It is on my Twitter feed. I believe it's on Lachlan's Twitter feed, at It's Dean Blundell, at Lachlan Cross. I can't wait. I think it's in July 5th or 2nd or something like that. I can't remember when it's coming out.
That's one I'll drag the wife out to the theaters to see.
Oh, totally. I'll try and do the same, and I'll get this. Yeah. I don't get it. Like, it's
no,
you know what I have to do to get significant others to actually watch those movies, like Thor or Deadpool? I'm like, it's a true story. You'll love it.
Is Thor the one with the guy with the big hammer?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
And then halfway through the movie, they're like, this isn't a true story. I'm like, no, but you wouldn't have come if I didn't lie to you about it. Did that twice. Totally worked until halfway through the movie, which in itself told another story, which is why I'm not with that person anymore. Anyway, like if you can last halfway through Thor and you think it's a fucking real movie, you need to. That's the wrong partner for me. Anyway, good to see you. Lots of stuff to get to. We're going to talk about a massive miscarriage of justice, which is actually kind of funny because it fits into what policing looks like today. The Umar Zamir story. We'll get to that a little later on.
I've been following that.
Dude, you watch
that's crazy.
Shit? Yeah.
Just the coverage, just the news. I wasn't watching it. I don't know if was the trial being broadcast. I don't think they had cameras.
No, the trial wasn't being broadcast. But quick Cole's notes before we get to your guest today.
How does that guy end up on trial for first-degree murder? That's my question.
For fucking 3 years, this dude. Canada Day. He's got his pregnant wife in the car. He's new to Canada. He's got a 2-year-old in the back. His name's Umar Zamir. He's in a parking garage coming back from Canada Day celebrations because he's new to the country, loves this place, is so excited. There's a stabbing in the building attached to the parking garage this guy just happened to be in.
Yeah.
Cops look at him. They go, fuck, guy's brown. Let's attack his car. So they do, plain clothes. Don't tell him he's a cop. He panics, backs up, nudges a dude. Nudges a dude. One cop falls down, still doesn't know these guys are cops. And they've now got their guns pointed at him. And he's like, what the fuck? I got to get out of here. All the carjackings and everything that goes on in the city. He's got his wife and his pregnant kid. So he takes off, runs over one guy, and he's dead. And the fucking cops legitimately, and this is unbelievable, cooked up like 3 or 4 stories, lied on the stand. The judge sends 100%. Judge sends the jury back. And he's like, listen, I don't know how you convict on any of this because it doesn't match the evidence. These guys clearly aren't telling the truth with their evolving theories. They deliver not guilty. You take off, Mr. Umar Zamir. His now legal GoFundMe to sue the cops is at $300,000.
Good for him.
And on top of it all, the widow of the man who died, it was a terrible accident. Yeah. And the police chief said they wished they had a different fucking result. Really? You wish an innocent man would have gone to jail just so you could have your pound of flesh? Fucking unbelievable. Anyway, we'll get to that a little later on in the show.
The one question I have, one correction, I think, is from my, like, I was following it, not what, but I do believe they attempted to, they were playing close. It was an undercover van that they were in, the cops, but I think they did try to identify themselves as police officers. So
they did not. No.
Okay. All right. I just saw that as part of the,
and he did not know, and they were in plain clothes. And the stories that they told, anyway, we'll get to the stories. It's just unbelievable. Like, if you're one of those people, it's like thin blue line, got a little thinner yesterday. So we'll talk about that. Anyway, nice to have you. Good to be here. You've got a guest today that we need to get to.
One of the things about being on this podcast and having an audience right across the country is that I'm in constant communication with people. And I'm meeting new people on a regular basis. And somebody showed up in my DMs, and I'm not exactly sure where our conversation started, but her name is Wendy Gray, and she obviously had insight into this business. And so over the last couple of months, we've communicated back and forth. So it turns out Wendy Gray, and I made her do the math. This happened to me when I was talking to my lawyer about how long I've been in the business, right? Because I'm in the middle of a legal situation with my past employer. And you start doing math and you go, hold on, I've been in this business for 33 years. I think I did that to Wendy because she had to go back and do some math on her career. And there was a couple of lines in there where, like, around date, she was like, holy shit, I'm old. We're also not supposed to make fun of her for her email address. Anyway,
I won't give it up.
Wendy Gray started in the business in the 90s, went to school, got into broadcasting from the news side of things, and has a very interesting story because her career led to running 34 radios, overseeing the news departments for 34 radio stations with a company called Vista. And not only that, she sat on a number of boards. And we'll let her tell her story, but she's got a very interesting perspective on how we get our news in this country and where radio is at from an ownership perspective. And I can't wait for this conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, Wendy Gray.
Hi.
I bet when was the last time you had an applause, Wendy? When?
Well, it's been a few years, I think.
Oh, Wendy, it is so nice to meet you. Look at you. Look at you. We got some female content on the show today, which is really nice. It's usually just a massive sausage fest, Wendy. So thank you for agreeing to be on the show. Appreciate it.
Actually, usually is a sausage fest. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thanks for breaking it up. How are you? Where are you calling us from today?
I am in beautiful Stratford, Ontario.
Oh, Stratford, home of Shakespeare in the Park, Justin Bieber, and farming.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah.
Stratford. I didn't know
Biebs.
that.
Oh, dude. Okay. Biebs is like, there's a Biebs museum. Have you been to the Biebs museum yet, Wendy? Have you gone to see Justin Bieber in all his childhood glory? And
I actually haven't, but ironically, I live in the same building that Justin Bieber grew up in.
Oh, do you really?
I do. Yeah.
So where you are now, where you're situated now, that's where the Biebs spent his formative years? Is there a plaque? Is there, do you pay homage? Do you have to do the whole spectacle, testicles, wallet, and watch when you go into the Biebs? No.
But he was here. He did a series of mini docs, right?
Yeah.
About his life and whatnot. And he did show up here. And it's funny because in the documentary, you can see my head sitting watching television when he showed up dusky one evening and got into the building and went to his apartment, which was on the first floor, and did a whole thing about it. So yeah, it's cool. kind of funny.
Is that ever cool?
I'm not a Biebs fan. But
how can you not be? I'm a Biebs guy. I hate Drake. He wants to kill me. However, I still like his music. Yeah, it's Canadian. I don't mind little Biebs. You know, the good thing is that in the documentary, if they got your head sitting watching TV, curious, did they catch you drinking or catch you doing? Okay, good. I'm just asking. Maybe dragging a Magnum.
Not at all.
That would have been cool.
No, it's kind of a fun fact about my life in Stratford. Yeah.
Yeah. Originally from Stratford. Where are you from originally, Wendy? Where'd
No,
you grow up?
originally, I was actually born in Whitby, and Dad worked for General Motors. He started at General Motors when he was 15. So if you know anything about GM, it's 30 years and out. So they had me very late in life, and at 45, he retired, and we moved to a little place called Bancroft, Ontario. And I grew up. I say I grew up. We moved there when I was 6. So I grew up in Bancroft, Ontario. And that's where I started my career, actually.
Oh, career in radio. So what did your dad is an auto worker? What did your mom do? Was she a homemaker? And what happened? Because you've got a kind of an interesting career, right? You've been at the top of the food chain when it comes to management and media. You're a news director, as Lachlan pointed out. So what was the impetus? Were you one of those people that would listen to the radio and go, I want to do that. I can do that. Would you sit there and practice like he and I did? Well, he did. I didn't. I didn't want to do this job, but just kind of found myself doing it. When did you fall in love with the radio industry? There's the question.
Okay. That's an interesting question. I would listen to Dick Smythe and Tom Rivers on what was CFTR. In those days.
680.
And yeah, 680. And fell in love with Dick Smythe. And I had an interesting childhood. My father you couldn't talk in my house from 4:30 to 7. We had one channel, which was global. He would watch the Y and the R from 4:30 to 5:30, and then he'd watch global news from 5:30 to 7. And you didn't talk unless it was a commercial break. And so that got me into news, really, and watching it and absorbing it. My dad was also a very proud Canadian and believed that if you're going to live in this country, you needed to know how it is governed. So when I got into high school, we would leave and go to Ottawa for a week. And we would sit in question period for an hour, and then we'd leave and we'd go and do all the museum stuff. So I firmly blame my father for daddy issues, daddy issues. But I firmly blame my father for my career choice. And
your love of news. Yes.
And Dick Smythe. God rest them both.
Yes. So you come from a home where news was important to your father and The Young and the Restless, which is kind of cool, right? Victor Newman was around back then. Everybody shares a Victor Newman story. And then your dad, I'm sorry, I'm laughing. I shouldn't laugh. For vacation would take you guys to Ottawa so you could sit in the gallery for question period. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Were you like, hey, is there a pool here? Can we go? Is there a McDonald's in this place?
No. I actually enjoyed it. I have always been interested in government. In fact, when I got old enough to understand voting and the whole electoral process, right?
Yeah.
My dad was NDP. My mom was conservative. So they'd go out and vote, and I'd laugh at them when they got home. You can't kind of cancel each other out, So it was an interesting childhood living with an NDPer and a conservative. So
interesting too from the perspective
they would never be married
the family. Probably not, but also that the family was so politically focused, right, Wendy?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know if everybody grows up in homes like that. I think it's more common now where it's kind of you know what? Don't talk during the news. There's probably rules in a lot of houses where we don't talk about politics. And you know what? I don't know if that's healthy, but that's probably more the norm now, where if a kid starts to show a little bit of interest in politics, the old man might shut him down at 13, 14, 15, 16 years of age and might have rules in the house where we don't have those discussions. No one talks about how they vote. So I listen, you had a different childhood, but I don't think it was a bad thing that you were thrown into those waters.
Not at all.
Cool.
it formed my opinions. You know, one funny story about my father, he was a very religious man, and the only time I ever heard him swear was when Pierre Trudeau was on the television. I've actually witnessed him. That's how I learned to swear, was every time Pierre Trudeau was on the television. And I actually witnessed my father throwing a slipper at the screen when Trudeau Sr. was on. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
Oh man, is that extreme dislike of that name is generational.
I've seen it in the prairies too. I mean, he was hated. He was despised. In Western Canada.
Yeah, I remember when Mulrooney took over, and I remember my dad. And this is like, I'm a kid at the time, right? I don't know anything about politics. My dad was one of those card-carrying conservatives who would be like your dad, you know, and everything he said about Trudeau was terrible. Everything he said about Trudeau was bad. He's like, fuck the metric system. And I'm like, what's that? Like, what are you talking
about?
Why
are we mad at the metric system?
My dad was unreasonably angry at measurements. Measurements for a long fucking time. Still is, because he's like, what's pounds to kilograms if it's 2.2 pounds? I'm like, look it up, dude. He's like, fucking Trudeau. You guy's 72. He changed the fucking metric system like 80 years ago. He still carries an axe for the metric system. It's
man.
Anyway, yeah, it's fascinating. So you grow up, your dad immerses you in it because he's so keyed in. So he would be, your dad, in my opinion, would be like my dad back then, one of them convoy guys. Like, he'd be one of those guys who'd be like, we're going to Ottawa. Fuck this place. Like, they were so engaged all the time.
And they didn't wear their seatbelts on the way.
Yeah.
No.
So get in the back, no seatbelts. We're going to chain smoke and hot box all the way to Ottawa, Wendy. And you're like, no problem. Here we go. But that was how I grew up too. So it's fascinating that you grew up like that. But my dad was never engaged. He was just always angry about fucking kilograms to pounds. It was an unbelievable situation. I didn't understand either of them. And so that's the impetus for you. So when do you parlay that interest? You get through school. You then get into radio school. You go to, is it Loyalist College for broadcast journalism, Wendy? Is that correct? And this is like, you're hyper-focused, right? A lot of people like Lachlan, a lot of people like me, like you get that bug of communicating and you've got an interest in communicating in a certain manner. It's on. Like, you go to broadcast school when? 93? 94?
91.
91?
Actually, back up a little bit.
Okay, let's back up. I love the hand use, by the way. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm Scottish. I talk with my hands. They say it's only Italians, but Scottish people do it too. I actually was interested in journalism, period, just telling storytelling. Yes. And at first I thought newspapers. And so when I was in grade 11, I spent 2 days with Christy Blatchford, job shadowing Christy Blatchford at the Sun. And she terrified me. She came up to my shoulders, tiny woman. But she terrified me. And she, even then, which would have been 1989, 90, she told me, get into electronic media. Print is going to die.
Wow.
She knew it. She felt it back then. And I'll never forget, I met her again during the 5th anniversary of the Douglas Creek Estate occupation in Caledonia. She was there. Of course, she wrote a fabulous book about it. I was there because there was a radio station that I was news director in Caledonia, so I was there covering it. And I told her, I said, thank you so much for warning me about the state of print journalism. And I did follow your advice and get into broadcast journalism. So yeah, that was kind of cool. Yeah.
Okay. So she's like, Christy Blatchford, by the way, is a legend. She passed away a few years ago of cancer. One of the most unbiased minds in journalism in Canada. We lost a giant a few years ago. She was awesome. She wrote about me a few times when I got fired from The Edge. And I'm like, and I remember thinking, I was so confused. Is she being nice to me or is she giving me fucking shit? Like, what is she doing here? but like she had this amazing way of nuance, like presenting a couple of sides for you, a couple of sides for me. And she was fairly conservative in her views, but she also had the ability to look outside those views, which not many people do. To her point, Prince dead, you're like, okay, I'm going to get into radio. Then you go to broadcast journalism school at Loyalist, right?
Right.
Did you get the bug for it? Did you enjoy that? Like, what is it that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Actually, in grade 13, yes, I'm that old. In grade 13, I took an English lit course and a creative writing course. I had like 98% in the lit course and 55 in the creative writing course, because my teacher was all into poetry, and the best I could do was Jack and Jill Went Up the Hill, right? I just poetry, and I don't work.
No, you're not interested in haikus?
No.
Not a big haiku person. I'm a bit of a haiku guy myself. Limericks?
Yeah.
Hickory dickory dock? Not interested.
No.
I got a limerick in me.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. Let's save it for later.
After a couple of beers.
Yeah. So 50% of the course was an independent study unit. And so I decided to do it as a television broadcast on the first Afghanistan conflict. And I did it as a television broadcast, the history and what happened and whatnot. And that teacher despised me because I did not like poetry, and poetry was his thing. And he came up to me after that and he said, "You found what you need to do for the rest of your life."
Good for him.
And by that time I had already applied to Loyalist and Ryerson and all the going concerns at that point for broadcast journalism. But yeah, that I've always had the bug. I went into Loyalist college. I think I read the first newscast on the brand new college radio station. And I've loved it ever since. Now, I graduated from Loyalist, and then I went back to my hometown looking for a job. And I was home maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and I got a phone call from the program director of the little 1,000 watt AM radio station. He called me up and he said, "I hear you're home. I have a position. Would you like to come and interview?" So I said, "Yeah, absolutely." I did. So I went up, and it was for swing announcing and weekends. And he takes me in to the studio, and there's a board. And it is a massive board with all these slides and pots and
simeters and switches and slides and EQs. Yeah.
And of course, I had taken broadcast journalism.
Yeah.
I had never
no radio, no opping experience. Yeah.
Okay. Oh wow.
So he said to me, "Can you do this?" And I said to him, lied through my teeth to get the job. I said, "Oh, sure, I can do that, but somebody's going to be here the first day, right? To train me."
Yeah.
After that, I spun records and CDs at the time and did radio bingo.
Yeah. You did
radio bingo.
Bingo.
Did you do swap radio too?
I did.
Do like we used to call it tradio. I did that.
Tradio radio.
See, a lot of people don't understand the magic of doing like a swap meet on live radio. Like you can't imagine it because
Harry, I told you last week you can't sell firearms. Well, here's my number.
Or vehicles. Or cars. Yeah.
I did it in Castlegar, and when I was growing up, I lived there too. But they had trader phone or whatever they called it, and it was so funny because all the Dukabors in the neighborhood would get in there, and they loved it. They were selling everything. I got the box of peaches. I got the cook stove.
I got a box of peaches. I got 10 pounds of peas and my daughter.
Yeah.
You're like, hey, it's human
daughters
trafficking.
Off limits. No daughters.
That live radio.
Oh, it was
so
the best.
Good.
Yeah, it was awesome.
I think the best thing was the radio bingo. Because
how do you call bingo? Like, how does someone?
They had a real bingo machine in the studio, and it would spit balls out, and I would read the balls.
Sell the cards at all the stores around town, and then you had to call. People had to call in to claim bingo.
Yeah.
So you had to, while you're calling the numbers, you had to watch the damn phone line. Right? People would get so pissed.
but
That's awesome.
it was for a great cause. It was
Yeah.
to build a pool in the community. So it was a great cause. But the one, this is the most bizarre. I had a listener come in one day and she brought a cassette tape. So again, we're aging ourselves, right? And it was of me.
To be fair, you're aging yourself. We haven't told any of these stories, but yeah.
Right. So she brings in a cassette tape and I put it in and I play it. And it was me. She was recording me calling bingo with her parroting me. So I'd call B13 and the parrot would go, B13.
Please tell me you still have that audio.
I have it somewhere. Yeah. It's in a box around here somewhere. Yeah.
Now we just got to find like the technology. Like you got to go back in time to find the technology to play that audio. Do you really? You got a cassette player?
Yeah. I kept a bunch of. I kept I got a box. Got a ghetto blaster in the. Swear to God, the garage. Thing has been through like 4 wars. It looks like.
The one that takes like 42 D-cell batteries costs like $80 to play it for 6 hours at the beach. Remember those things? You're like, fuck, why isn't this playing? Like, yeah, remember that? Yeah. Okay, so that's
you get CD player on the top.
Oh yeah, it was awesome. Yeah, yeah. That's it. You press the button, you dip the CD in there, and it's like you better put it in the right way because all you'd hear is right. It's the same. Okay, so you do Tradio, you get your start in your small town. Radio bingo. Fuck, I love that. And then you get, so what's your next career move? Where did you go? And how did you get into management? Because you start like everybody else started, and everybody in radio loves those first experiences, right?
That's
your first job, you're excited, you're on the radio, you're doing your radio voice, you're like, hey, how you doing? You're smoking.
Did you smoke in the control room?
Oh yeah, sure. Wendy, did you smoke in the control room? You did, didn't you?
No, I did not, but my first general manager used to read the horoscopes with a cigarette hanging out of her mouth. It was beautiful. 9:15 every day. She had a smoke hanging out of her mouth and she was reading the horoscopes out of the Toronto Star.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so how do you go from that? This is the story that I love. Like Lachlan starts a small town. I start in a small town, right? Fort McMurray, Rosetown, Saskatchewan, end up in Toronto at the Edge for 15 years. Fairly well-known story about that whole thing, right? Which is big. Like it's everybody's goal is to get to a big city or to run radio stations or to ascend to management. Like that's what everybody's goal in radio was. So how did you go from that to being the person that you and eventually became, which is a quote big swinging dick in the media cracker factory, if you will?
Well, Christopher Grossman was buying up a lot of radio stations at the time. And so he purchased the radio station in Bancroft and flipped it to FM and kept me on. I think I was the only employee he kept on. And so it was 21, 23 radio stations at the time. And he called me up one day. And he said, can you meet me in Bracebridge for lunch? And I thought, oh, here we go. I'm getting shit canned, That didn't happen. He actually offered me the news director's role for the entire company. But he said, you have to move from no, it was Halliburton Broadcasting at the time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And he said, but you have to move to Bracebridge because that's where Halliburton's head office was. So by that time, I had worked since I was 14 at a convenience store. I knew most of the population was 3,500 people, right? And then I was on the radio. And then I worked at the beer store at the same time, concurrently as the radio. So it was a bit like being in a glass fishbowl. I couldn't go to the grocery store and buy milk because people would stop me. Why do you play Shania Twain so much? So it was a bit of a relief to move from there to Bracebridge. And so I spent a lot of time in Bracebridge, in Muskoka.
Yeah.
And then he bought Caledonia, Stratford, and Niagara Falls in very quick succession. And I was also operations manager at the time too. And
how old are you at this time?
Yeah, you're young.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was about 37, 38.
Wow.
Good for you.
Yeah.
All right.
So he wanted somebody who was familiar with Halliburton's processes and policies and all of that sort of stuff to move to Southern Ontario to oversee these stations that he had just purchased. So he gave me the opportunity. I knew I didn't want to live in Caledonia, but I came down to Stratford, lived here for a bit, went to Niagara Falls. I felt at the time that the vibe of the staff at Niagara Falls fit more of my personality than here in Stratford. So I chose to move to Niagara Falls. And then he sold us to Vista. And, fortunately, Vista kept me on, and they sold Caledonia and Niagara Falls. Niagara Falls, bit of a non-starter, up against the House of Rock. You guys quite familiar
Hits
with
FM.
what?
Yeah.
Very, very difficult
It was a monster
market. Yeah. Difficult market for anybody to make anything go there. So they sold Caledonia first, and then they sold Niagara Falls. And I had been, at that time, I had been commuting from Niagara Falls to Stratford 2 to 3 times a week. So when they sold Niagara Falls, I left my husband and said, I'm moving to Stratford. So I've been in Stratford for 7 years.
Wow. That's where you've been. So that brings you to Stratford, where you still are. How long have you been out of radio?
December 22nd, 2023 was my last day.
Oh my God.
And
so recently.
you chose to do this.
I did.
Why? Because you're at the top of your game. You're running a bunch of stations. You're the news director for like 30 stations. It's that ascension that everybody wants, in that industry. I know why, but I would love for you to tell people, why you chose at the top of your game, right? Running a bunch of radio stations, news departments, why you chose to walk away from an industry that you loved and maybe still love it, just in its essence, right? Yeah. Why?
Burnout. It was burnout. I was working the job of 2.5 people at least. And it was nonstop. My phone would start going at 5 in the morning and maybe end at 10 o'clock at night on a good day. People calling in sick. I'd have to figure out their shifts. And I think my demise in radio, I got through the COVID-19 pandemic, no problem. They stuck me up in a cabin in Barry's Bay, Ontario with myself and my dog for 40 days, which, yes, sounds biblical, but because we didn't know at the time, right? We didn't know how bad it was going to be. So the thought process was, get me out of Southern Ontario, away from people, put me someplace where we did have a radio station. So if I had to do interviews or whatnot, I had access to that. So all of that, honest, I am going to write a book one day, was fine until the Freedom Convoy hit. The Freedom Convoy hit, and I'll never forget it as long as I live. The Thursday night before the trucks ascended on Ottawa, I got a phone call on my cell phone, and it came up private number. Well, when you're in news, you answer private number calls because that's usually how the cops get in touch with you, right? So I thought it was
or it might be a sweet lead that nobody wants to leave their name with, and you're like, it might be cool too, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So I picked up the phone, and I got, "Is this Wendy Gray?" And I said, "It is. Who am I speaking to?" "None of your fucking business." And he said, "You better make sure that your doors are locked tonight because I'm coming for you, you piece of shit, Nazi, Trudeau loving piece of media." Yeah, it was extremely disturbing. I stayed inside. I had my neighbor friends come and take my dog out because I wouldn't go outside after dark. I called the cops. The cops had extra surveillance around my building to make sure nothing happened. And then it started. It wasn't just me. It was reporters. It was spouses of reporters, and the vitriol. And I've never been called a Nazi, a fascist, my words that I don't even want to say here, as much as I was during that time. And it had a profound effect. It had a profound effect on me, and I think on some of my teammates. And so I toughed it out. You know how you do? You tough it out.
Can I stop you there and ask a couple questions?
Mm-hmm.
Who was this fucking guy who called you and threatened to kill you?
No idea.
And
No
for,
idea.
for
And
what,
when you
for what reason? Just because you're at some level, you know, your
Because you're
name's on
reporting?
a webpage
Yeah.
And is it because your news stations were reporting
on
that the convoy was happening, or were you having opinion on why it was happening? Like,
Which is
nothing.
because we were reporting on it. Yeah. And I can tell you something. I worked for 2 weeks solid to get a member of the convoy to call us and do an interview. And then we worked for 8 hours to make that person sound sane. Like, we tried to be unbiased and deliver the news. That is has always been my thing.
How many phone calls did you and your staff get? How many threats from convoy people did you get? And what was the intention in terms of those threats, do you think?
To scare us, I think.
Into not talking about what was going on at all?
Yeah. We had bomb threats at some of our radio stations in Alberta. I call it Angry Alberta. Sorry, Lachlan.
Okay. It's okay. It is at times.
Yeah, we had bomb threats, and I actually, about 4 or 5 days in, I stopped counting the number of threats we got, because they were just mad at the media. And you know what? Frankly, the media did it to themselves. I'm not talking about small independents like I was working for. We did our best to remain unbiased during the whole thing. I mean, we obviously were humans. We had our own opinions about it. But as far as news goes, number one concern, right? Stay unbiased, stay neutral.
So that would explain why I had 1,400 death threats for calling those fucking psychos hillbillies for 3 years.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. I had people parked in front of my house. I've been threatened. Like, fuck, it's old hat. It's what they did. Anybody who reported on anything they did, anybody who had an opinion on anything they did, anybody who said anything about the convoy that didn't sit well with complete mental and physical and emotional degenerates who had the IQ of a fucking sack of flour, okay? Anybody got threatened. Anybody. Didn't matter who you were. And depending on how big you were, right? And we did some podcasts where you had like 15, 20,000 people watching these podcasts during the actual convoy. Anybody who had
I jumped on the podcast, Wendy. Do you know Dean? I know you're relatively new to the podcast, but do you know Dean and Crier Media were like, I remember we were doing weekends, Dean. Like, I would get a note from Dean going, "Can you go? We're going in 30 minutes. We're going live." Like,
but we had Karima and a lawyer and a GoPro walking around the crowd, and she was like reporting on it, and it was literally just reporting what was going on. They were passing my picture around at truck stops, telling truckers that, giving them my address. It was unbelievable. And it wasn't truckers. It was just a bunch of mental defective degenerates who were really pissed off that their life sucked. But to your point, these people had been ginned up. You say it's radio or media's fault, and they do share responsibility.
I want Wendy to expand on that. Why do you think media is in the state it's in, and the distrust from the public is so rampant with mainstream media?
And can we get to that in just a second? Because I want to go from, and that's a great question, and I apologize, but it's just a matter of process, Wendy. So you're getting death threats. You're burnt out. You're not leaving your house. What year is this? 2020, 2021?
2021, wasn't it?
2021.
Yeah, February 2021. Yeah.
Okay. And does it ramp up? Does it get worse? And take us through to 2023 when you're like, I am sweetly out of here. I'm done.
I think what happened was I chose to power through and enter Israel Hamas. And I was doing okay, but I knew I wasn't right. My family certainly knew I was depleting. And then I started I was making decisions. We weren't giving death toll numbers because it was coming from, the Hamas run, a known terrorist organization. And I started getting a lot of kickback from reporters, and they weren't happy with how I was, reporting on it. Started to get what I call war porn, YouTube videos from people like this conspiracy theorists, and it just got so much. On the eve of my 51st birthday, I said, what am I doing here? And I left a month later. And I knew I had a problem in my head, and so I went and I got help. And I was diagnosed with PTSD, and my shrink thinks it's from the whole Freedom Convoy thing. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Welcome to Club PTSD. Nice to have you.
You know what's interesting about this? I just want to say this out loud because I know that Wendy isn't going to say this. This is an individual that has a wild resume in our business, right? Like, when you take a look at what she's done, she was on boards. She was representing media as a whole. She was running an entire radio station division for the news for 34 radio stations. Like, this is not, you don't end up into that type of a role without being a certain type of personality, right? And so and not only that, I will say this, because I've been in this business for a long time, what Wendy achieved as a female broadcaster is even more extraordinary. So the fact that you went up the ranks and did what you did, and so you're not a little flower, right?
No.
You got there because of your chutzpah, right? And because of who you are. So the fact that you were beaten down to a point where you're reevaluating everything that you've done in your life and walking away from a business that you love and that you were very wildly successful in, I think is worth saying out loud, Wendy. And I'm glad you did it for you. And I know now you're working in the nonprofit organization with a nonprofit organization, and you're probably doing something that you absolutely love. But this broadcast business is man.
It's a niche, isn't it? It's a niche. It's a niche. I love it. I do. I love it. And I will always be a champion for radio. There is a place for radio. Everybody says radio is dying. Well, radio's been dying since television started, right?
Yeah.
Bullshit. It's not dying. It just needs to be transformed. Right?
Thank you. I've been saying the same thing.
It is as dead as the people that run it. That's why it's dead. It doesn't have to be, but it's dead because the people that run it don't give a fuck about people like you who love it. It's dead because they won't listen to anybody. They don't give a shit. And everybody in that business thinks they're smarter than the next person while they continue to lose money and have to fire people who are like, hey, at least I get to keep my job. I'm an executive. Guess what, executive? You're going to lose your job too when the fucking whole thing collapses. And it will. It is. And we're watching it because good people like Wendy are leaving. So you decide to get help, PTSD, you're working on yourself, but we've been talking about some of the industries, or we've been talking about some of the issues in the industry, and Lachlan pointed it out. And Lach, that was a great question that you asked, which was like, why do you think that what you went through, what Lachlan went through, what I went through is media's fault? What do you think media's fault is?
Why do we do it to ourselves?
What led to this? Because I have opinions on it. I think it sits in hubris. I think it sits in a number of things, but I also think it sits in that whole government funding package that all these media companies get. So take us through that and your expert opinion, because you are an expert in this subject, Wendy, and I'd love to know what you think.
Well, for, the company that I was working for, fairly small outfit, but again, scared to leave my house, for 2 weeks, watching the coverage and, from all the big guys. Because if something happened, I needed to jump on, write about it, keep our audience informed. And I would watch the reporters, and it just drove me wild. They would walk by the most, and I say normal looking people that were there protesting, not happy with the government and the lockdowns and the vaccines and all of that. They would walk by the most normal looking people, and they would stop and interview the most redneck person they could find. And that's when I started to really see and feel the mistrust in mainstream media.
Yeah.
Was then. And they did it to themselves because they had either from,
agenda.
They had an agenda. They had an agenda.
What was the agenda?
Paint them as crazies.
Yep.
And ignore why there's a reason why they might be there. Right. Yep. And and I've commented on that multiple times over the last 3-4 years as well.
Yeah, but the crazies are calling her at work, threatening to kill her.
But she's and they drove her out of the business, but she still is seeking the truth. And the truth is that there is a root problem in our country as to why we don't trust the media. And it's a growing, we talked about it, Dean, where that fringe group isn't a fringe group anymore. And everybody has a different perspective. And being on this podcast for quite a few years, Dean and I have gone through an evolution of how we present content. And Dean's obviously, he runs Crier Media, but does listen to me. And we have had these conversations. Like, we have to open up the doors and let other people in. We got to hear other voices, because that's the only way I think we can fix the issues that we have right now. And you're not wrong, Wendy. You're not wrong. I think there is media and the ownership need to take some responsibility, as well as both sides of the political spectrum in this country. Like, that's the thing that drives me crazy. Like, I've said this out loud, and I don't want to make this about Justin Trudeau, but if he actually going to bed every night, if he's going to bed every night thinking that he doesn't play a part in the division in this country, my God, he's dumber than I thought he was.
You think that's true, Wendy? You agree with Lachlan? You think that a certain segment of Canadian society has been vilified or painted as psychotic? Being willing, as Lachlan points up, to stand up for some of those psychos and some of their actual grievances. Because what I do is I throw the baby right out with the fucking bathwater. I love doing it. So, like, if someone comes for me and they represent a community, I'll give it to the whole fucking community until that community tells that idiot to pipe down. That's what I love to do. It's my thing, and I have the ability and the reach to do it, right? Someone like you has the ability and the understanding to look at nuance, right? Where you're going, okay, these people are being painted as absolute psychos and rednecks. Generally speaking, that is the core of that group of people, though, that I've experienced. You know that, and I know that. But there are legitimate grievances that were painted as, you're racist. You're stupid. And I get that. I get there are all kinds of nuance around this. But I want to get to a piece that sits within their sphere, which they're not wrong about. When I say they, I mean people who go, mainstream media is corrupt. It is. It is. You've worked in it. I've worked in it. I have been in board meetings where they're like, hey, listen, the big pillar of finances coming from our new budget comes from the government. Because we're going to get some fucking handouts here, boys and girls. So if you want to play your cards right, you need to interview these people over the next couple of weeks.
That ever happened to you, Wendy?
No, never. No. I have to say that the company that I worked for never interfered with my editorial judgment. Did you remember Marilee Fullerton? She was the Minister of Long-Term Care here in Ontario.
Yeah. She was hilarious.
I took her to task so hard on the radio and she hung up on me.
Did she?
Didn't like me too much. No.
Well, she's largely responsible for killing a whole bunch of fucking seniors during the pandemic. And
that woman.
Yeah, and then wrote a book about how it was everybody else's fault. She's legitimately a fucking moron. Yeah. Anyway, continue.
She is. I agree.
Yep. Thank you.
So I was very fortunate that I had a lot of editorial autonomy, and to the best of my knowledge, other than what was it, the wage subsidy program that they gave to just about everybody, we have never taken that company has never taken a dime from.
No, it got chewed up by Bell, and I think most of that money went to the.
Yeah. And so there's the problem. Therein lies the problem about the mistrust of mainstream media, about Bill C-18, all of that. Media should not be paid by the government. Shouldn't. And telcos have no business running radio stations.
Money. And they take money. Yeah.
Well, and here's the fucking crazy part. This is the crazy part to me. Is that this has been happening for 15 years.
We know about it now because of COVID for some reason, though. Right?
This has been happening for 15 years in this country. And there was a move about 15 to 17 years ago that those telcos, in their wisdom, said, listen, we're going to control the internet. We control the internet, mobile internet, at-home internet, and all that content. Where are we going to get content from? Got to go buy some content farms. What are content farms? They're broadcast and print and agency work, people that produce content, news outlets that used to be unbiased, right? So they go and buy all those assets, Wendy. And then they're like, ooh, we're losing money because we are a telco and we don't know how to run media companies. Let's just suck these fucking things dry and complain to the government that we're going out of business. And then we can't do ad money because big tech is taking all the ad money from Google AdWords, and Meta's taking all the ad money.
Ding.
And the government bought it. First Harper, then Trudeau. And we have been fire hosing money at these people, which by virtue, to your point, Wendy, Lachlan and I talk about this all the time. And I believe this to be fucking true. You take $1 from the government in media. Everything you print is suspect and biased after that point, is it not?
Yeah, absolutely it is. Absolutely it is.
Wow.
And it may not be the case in every situation, but it's the perception. It's the optics. It's what the people that were our audience understand it to be. And the optics of us, I mean the broadcast media, taking money from the government, the optics makes it look like we're bought and paid for.
Yep.
And in some cases, we weren't. My former company, we weren't.
And you know what's
but to your
interesting
point, hang on just 1 second, to your point, and Lachlan and I talk about this all the time. I can see, and it's fucking terrible, I can see the vitriol because I hold the same vitriol for these companies because they're taking all that money, they're firing people in your case, people that do this job, taking that money and giving that money in Bell's case.
I did.
I know, but they're taking salaries, right, that are paid for by the government under the auspices that we'll give you this money, 80 million, 400 million. Spread it around. However, you got to pay your people. You have to keep people employed in small towns. And Bell's like, no problem. We'll do that. Then the transfer happens and the 60 million goes in their bank account. And then they're like, let's fucking fire 4,800 people right now. Let's put all that money below the line and let's pay out dividends. Let's do it. And it happens again and again and again and again.
And they do it. When they do it, they're doing it and getting the money based on the fact that they're the only things that can protect getting the right information in the hands of Canadians.
But let's put blame where blame is due.
Please.
CRTC. I mean, at the end of the day, who let this happen? Who let Bell and Rogers take over half of the broadcast sticks in Canada? The CRTC.
And they lobby for the CRTC changes in the rules for ownership on a constant, like daily basis. They're in there. And they're throwing a lot of that money that they got from the government at the lobbyists to try to keep control of that business as well, right? Like that's the circular thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, can we just back up just a bit? Dean, I want to, because I want to make sure that people understand what Bill C-18 is. And I'm not smart enough to explain what it is, because I think a lot of people just, we'll get you to explain it, Wendy. Because if you're in a bar, if I'm watching a playoff game and I'm drinking a beer in a bar and I have a conversation with somebody I just met and we talk about Bill C-18, that person may just think that it's Justin Trudeau's attempt to censor the entire country. So there is a lot of misconception about what Bill C-18 is. And if you take like 1,000-foot view of it, was not the intention actually pretty good from the get-go, but the government got its hands on it, and now it's a mess, right? From all accounts.
So C-18, I think, came from some lobbying from mainstream media.
The Canadian Association of Broadcasters.
Yes.
Yes.
So the premise of the bill is because, they see Google and Meta and all of these platforms taking digital dollars from us, advertising dollars from us, and they have. I mean, there's no debating that they have. However, so what this bill was to do was we were sharing our news, our links onto Facebook, and we were getting like 60% of our traffic was coming from Facebook, because people don't understand to go to a website on their own. They need to be force-fed it on a feed. 60% of our traffic was coming from Facebook, but the government decided to force this, to make the platforms, the tech platforms, pay us to distribute our content, right?
Yeah.
Zuckerberg wouldn't flinch, and you saw it coming from a mile away, and the government wouldn't flinch. They would not listen. They were so hell-bent on pushing this through. They just did not listen. And so what has happened now? People are getting people aren't getting news through Facebook because, a lot of companies have tried through newsletters and, subscription-based vehicles to, Twitter as well. However, I was an early embracer of Twitter, but in a lot of the smaller remote markets, Twitter's not a thing. It's Facebook. Everybody's on Facebook. So Twitter still allows the sharing of links, but I don't think people are picking up on it.
No.
So in hindsight, what they've done is they've cut media off at the feet from online traffic, from eyeballs onto our online sites. And, it's places like Kawartha Now or the whole Village Media empire that are really suffering from it, because they don't have, like, a radio station has a big bullhorn, right? So we still have that outlet, but those online startups are the ones that it really hurt. Drove the traffic away. And then conversely, when you look at the other side of it, that's where the mistrust and the misinformation comes from, because you're not getting it from even a semi-legitimate source. You're getting it from AI creating bull
memes
and stuff, and using like actual logos from media to get people. It's clickbait, and that's where the and it really has hurt the media industry, right from the independents right up to the startups that are starting online, or I shouldn't call them startups. They've been around for a long time, but it's hurting.
So Wendy, when Bill C-18, and there was another one, like there was an earlier incarnation of it that got thrown out.
Well, there's two bills. Let me just bring you up to speed. So two bills, Bill C-18, Bill C-11. Bill C-11 was the censorship bill. Everybody thought it was a censorship bill. And by and large, it is. It's CRTC saying, hey, we might regulate social media, we might not. And they put that in their back pocket just in case they have to, because Justin Trudeau is a pussy and he refuses to enact any legal means to end hate speech. So here's why we have that. Number two, C-18. C-18 is, hey, listen, big tech, pay all the broadcasters.
That's
for
the
the privilege
needs to be said out loud, Dean. I want to make sure.
No, it's the dumbest shit, and I'll tell you why it's the dumbest shit. Because big tech, yes, to Wendy's point, has absolutely destroyed the advertising model, traditional advertising model, because they have the ability to target and be exact with their information and track that information. Radio was a great game for that, and it's a joke. And I'll tell you why it's a joke. Because everybody that bought radio advertising for a long time, and if you're a person that advertises on the radio, don't, first of all, and I'll tell you why. Because there's no guarantee that they can prove that any of your shit works. With digital media, you can prove it. You can prove engagement. You can prove turnover. You can prove conversion. You can be super exact. You can get that into the hands of the right person. It's not this, hey, we're going to put this thing on a diminishing asset and you're going to give us 40 grand a month for it. And if you do it enough, people might buy your tea towels. If you do it enough, people might sign up for your campground. Like it's literally a joke. And it has been a joke for a long period of time, but it's been one of those real quiet jokes in the industry. I was talking to my dad. He was an executive for a very, very long period of time in radio about this. And I said to him the other day, because I talk about our business, how exact, how the analytics are incredible. And he's 72. And you know what he said to me? He goes, dude, we sold bullshit for 40 years. He's like, we sold bullshit. And I go, what do you mean by that? And he's like, you know, you'd get in there, you'd play someone their brand new spanking commercial, you'd key them up, get them really excited, and you go, okay, the more you advertise, the better chance you have of this working. So you give me a bunch of money, and if it doesn't work, we'll figure it out, but it's probably going to work. Did it work? Some people would say it did. Some people would say it didn't. But he goes, we sold air that you couldn't track, right? That's what we did. You know, and if we sold something cool, we'd show up and do a remote. He goes, that was really the only thing worth selling on radio, but we did it all the time. And to that point, radio is still that model that has not embraced that digital portion, right?
The digital
and
side
when they haven't, none of them have. Like I have meetings all the time. We consult in this space with people that want to digitize their media content from a radio perspective. Like
some are better at it than others, but they're still way behind the eight ball. Right. Yeah.
Not many.
Yeah.
And to that point, that lack of foresight, the lack of having anybody with scrote in that industry to make a serious decision, and this is the truth, and the lack of people with any character whatsoever who believe in that medium. And to your point, Wendy, I believe radio has never been more viable because it's free and the reach is there and it's a blowhorn and you can bring people in with radio. You can't with print. You can't with television. It's just a thing you look at, right? Radio is interactive. It's free. It's here. You can watch it. You can turn it on. But unless radio decides to really start dry humping digital media, and unless they've got that plan and they're a digital radio first event, they're never going to succeed. No one will ever be successful in that space again. Wendy, that's just my opinion, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I've always been, well, since the inception. In fact, I think Grossman would tell you I harassed him into giving me websites because I knew that this is where we were going. So I've always been digital first mindset. You know, I used to preach to my teammates, while you're sitting there in the studio waiting for Katy Perry to stop warbling, put it on the website, feed it out through social media. And then when Katy Perry's done do your breaking news on the air, because it doesn't matter. And again, I was fortunate with the company that I worked for. They were trusted. We were small and medium markets, and they were trusted. So, but it doesn't matter if somebody hears it on the radio or sees your logo on Facebook telling them that a major highway is closed down. Appointment tuning doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, you're right.
People are getting it here.
Yeah.
And they don't, they're not necessarily listening to the radio 24/7 like they did back in my dad's time, my parents' time, or even in our time, right? You guys remember sitting around the radio waiting to hear if your bus was canceled? I do. That was important. Now it comes here. They don't need to listen to the radio for it. So that sort of appointment tuning doesn't happen.
So that shift in our minds about how we deliver content started to happen for me quite a few years ago, right? And I gotta tell you, one of the things that really changed my mind about the job that we were doing was COVID, because I started to realize that people were shutting off other things, other voices, and other that bothered them, and they were gravitating towards us because we were fun and they needed a break from all the craziness. So we would hear from people all the time. And I had a moment of panic when I ran into somebody. I was in a superstore or something, and they came up and they jokingly, I thought they were joking, but I remember getting a twinge of anxiety when this person admitted that they had shut off all other media and that I was his only connection to the world, like news. And I panicked. I'm like, dude, don't tell me that. That's terrifying. I can't be your news source. Like, have you heard the show? And he just kind of chuckled. And then it started to happen more and more. People were coming to us for news. They were also blaming us for, like, I don't know, whenever, depending on whatever story we were doing, they would say, did Justin tell you to, like, so we were getting that discredit side of things. And I would always say to them, oh, that's right. Go get the facts from Justin Trudeau so that we can get this news right for everyone. So I think my ability to make fun of it and roll with that maybe helped me. But I do have a point. It's coming, Wendy. Hang in there. I think the interesting thing is that
he makes great points. You just got to hang in there for a bit.
Got to hang in there.
I would have fired you as a reporter.
Oh, I would have, Wendy, I would have been a horrible reporter.
You would have promoted me to head reporter too, right? Because I get right to it. Yeah. Dude, I get it.
Succinct, Lachlan. Succinct.
No.
Get to it, dude. Get to it.
So anyway, the thing that I find interesting about the state of the business right now, Wendy, is that these things, I'm now more comfortable with it. But this type of format, this podcast, is actually a news source for a lot of Canadians.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And let me just kind of buttress that, Wendy. To Lachlan's point, people should not be getting their news from us. However,
no,
I am glad some people do, because we're one of the very few.
Wendy, is terrifying to me. Somebody that ran a news department for 34 radio stations.
That means we're on the right track. That means we're doing the right thing. And this is the thing, is that so many of us, like Lach, I mean, yeah, people shouldn't get their news from us, but they fucking should at this point. Yeah. And I'll tell you why. Because Wendy, you, me, all have the same impetus for being in this business, in this game, and doing this podcast. And that's accountability. That's just telling the truth. That's just telling people, hey, listen, this is the industry. This is the media ecosystem that a lot of people are angry about. And all of us from traditional media, somewhat successful or very successful. Like if we, all three of us at some point in time, doing the job we did at the level we did it at, would exceeds expectations as part of our performance review. Okay? Because of what we have been capable of doing and what we have done. And we're all like, oof, that's cancer over there. We need to move over here. If not, if we're going to have a chance, but if people actually are going to have a chance when it comes to consuming proper information in an entertaining way, because the sanitized way that we've done media over the past 100 years is dead. And to Wendy's point, whether, and your point, Locke, and I've come around in a big bad way over the past couple of years, is that people don't trust media for very good reasons, dude. They're just as corrupt as politicians. They work hand in hand with politicians and lawyers to change policies and get as much money as they can for executives and senior leadership team guys and board members. It has never, ever, ever been more about that than their fucking licensed responsibility, which they pay fees for that license, and they have abated those reasons to have those licenses. It is not about serving people anymore. It's about separating people.
Let's remember, though, Dean, those licenses aren't owned by...
They're leased.
No, they're owned by the public.
Yeah.
They're owned by you and I. Licenses are not owned by the media companies. They're owned by the public. And it's the media company's responsibility to harbor that and nurture that and not take sides. Here's something.
The first paragraph of the license.
Super pissed me off last week. I don't know if you guys watched the federal budget, but I often say you can take the girl out of news, but you can't take news out of the girl. And I still am always going to be informed. But now I can just say my opinion because I'm not the director of news and I can have an opinion. Last week, the federal budget gave the CBC $40 million. So now the CBC is saying, great, we don't have to lay anybody off anymore because you're covering our deficit. So that gives the CBC more opportunity to, Rosie Barton and Justin Trudeau and that whole love affair. But on the flip side, do you know what people with disabilities got? $200 more a month. CBC gets $40 million. They get to keep their staff, which average salary of somebody at the CBC is about $56 an hour. Do you know what a person on disability in Canada gets? $1,308 a month. When you break it down like that, is there any misconception of why the CBC blatantly is the most mistrusted media conglomerate there is in Canada? When you have that disparity between $56 an hour and $1,300 a month. It's insane.
Well, then you look at Catherine Tate, right? Who's the CBC president, basically telling everybody, no, our executives are all getting bonused out with that money now. So, and then won't even do an interview on her own CBC to talk about it. Refused yesterday. Travis Desharnage. It's like we tried to call our boss to get her to talk about this and she wouldn't talk about it.
And she wouldn't do it.
Of course she wouldn't, because every single one of those people is in a position of authority because of who they know. It's not because of what they do.
They know hypocrisy.
Yeah. So it's easy for me having this conversation to see why so many people and you know what? The people that are quiet about it don't have the ability. The people that are quiet about this do not have the ability to look outside their own bias. You do, coming from the background, you do. Lachlan does. I do, because we're not in it. We don't have self-interest in that industry anymore. But it is fucking amazing to me. You bring up this example of what CBC employees get paid, and then what some poor schmuck who can't go to the bathroom on his own or work again, what they get paid. And it's not even a poverty wage, Wendy. No. Not even a poverty wage.
That's not poverty wage.
So when people, no matter who they are, if they're David Parker, who I like, by the way, if they're David Parker, if they're Moose McGee from fucking Nepean, if they're Johnny Shitlips from Rosetown, Saskatchewan, and they happen to hate Trudeau and they don't trust media at all, guess what? There's a reason for that.
Yeah.
And we're talking about it right now. You can write off how crazy some of those bastards are, and some of those bastards are super crazy. And some of those people don't have a great perception of life. They can't operate outside that. They know they can't change it, but they still fight and give it all away.
And they're doing so much damage to their cause too.
Oh,
right?
Totally. But we're living in a time where people like Wendy made a choice. People like Lachlan had a choice made for him, so he chose to pivot and make a choice, right?
Yeah.
I had a choice made for me. I chose to respond and make a choice. And that choice was to do a better job of this than them. That was my choice. Right? Your choice was to get out of the industry altogether to save your mind. I did the same thing to save my mind. Lachlan is saving his mind by moving on and letting go of an industry that largely is as corrupt as it sounds. Is it not? Like, I mean, you've got other players that are not corrupt. You've got other people like you've worked with, and you've been very generous about how kind you've been to them. I can tell you this. I'm watching my old employer go tits up. I'm watching the National Post post a $20 million quarterly loss going, we don't know what we're going to do. I feel nothing but happiness about that. I feel nothing but pleasure when I see these companies go, oh, we got no money.
But they did it to themselves. Totally. You know what? Yeah. You know what? We actually almost said that at the exact same time. The other thing that drives me crazy, and maybe I don't know where Vista was, Wendy, in the last 4, 5, 6 years, but this template of marginalizing and consolidating and voice tracking the shit out of our business and program directors doing, 10 radio stations, that was the template that was established by the telecoms. So in order to eke out as much money as they possibly could. Yeah. And they continue to do it. And then it's the smaller companies. The thing that is making me so angry, it's the smaller companies that are adapting that same sort of template for demise of the industry, not even success. It doesn't work. We watched it not work. We've watched it for 20 plus years not work. And these companies continue. Now that the smaller companies are doing it. And I realize it's a money-based decision in a lot of cases. But I've said this out loud. Give me a stick. Give me a stick and leave me alone. I will make that successful. And you know what? It's not going to be about fucking Bryan Adams going to Metallica. It's not going to be about some magic music mix that's going to get everybody to listen. It's going to be about being live 24 hours a day and having people on that love doing the job and maybe giving them some damn information, like giving them an opportunity to pass on information. It would be a lot more work. It would be a lot harder, but it's possible. And that's where you and I kind of agree. And when we've been talking about before you coming on in the DMs and Twitter, you and I were on the same page. It's not being run properly. They're doing it to themselves. And it's hard to watch when you know there's still a whole bunch of people in this business and outside of the business that would love it, would love the business. Like, I'm that guy.
So there's a couple of issues here. Number one being that they are voice tracking too much. Live morning shows absolutely have to happen. And I do know that my former company does do live and believes in live morning shows, and the people that are doing the morning shows have to live in the community, live, work, and play. But here's the rub. You have to staff it, and you have to pay your staff.
Yes.
Because if you're not staffing it, you're going to get Wendy Grays 5, 6, 7 times over in a year. You're going to get people that are saying, what am I doing? Wearing 3 hats, doing 4 jobs. And you got to pay them. I mean, radio historically pays so frickin' low. I mean, when program directors of radio stations, of $1 million radio stations, need to go out and deliver pizza to make ends meet, that's not sustainable. Pay them.
I remember one time, This is always the grift of radio, and the more time I have out of traditional media and that specifically that radio industry, and keep in mind, I was very privileged, right? I mean, you're familiar with me. I had a really great run. I made lots of money. We had a 40 share. It was I had a great time, great life, gave me everything I have. So I'm really appreciative, but I'm appreciative of the essence of what I did. And I was really good at it. Still am. But
still modest too.
Thank you very much. Yeah, no, I Dean 1.5. I went from Dean 1.0. Then for a couple of years, I was Dean 2.0. I'm like a conglomerate of Fat Dean, Skinny Dean now. It's like all coming together.
I miss Fat Dean.
Well, he's here. He's coming out a little bit today, so enjoy it. So Fat Dean got treated really, really well. He understood what the game was, though, right? Specifically towards the end. Because if there's one thing I was really grateful for, I was in all of those meetings. Like I was part of meetings where guys are like, hey, we need to interview these guys. By the way, don't talk about these things because that's going to affect my individual relationships at the cricket club in Toronto. Or, hey, can you interview my buddy who owns an office supply store? By the way, they outfitted the entire new chorus building with office supplies. I told them that you would interview him. So it's be a big favor to me. And when the president of your company tells you to do it, you fucking, yeah, for sure. So you bring someone on, you're like, so tell me about your new chairs. I'm like, I couldn't be less interested in this shit. So there's always stuff like that, right? There's always stuff like that. But in the big scheme of things, to your point, I had an intern. Keep in mind, I'm making like a lot of money. Everybody in the station making a lot of money. We're 21 million in revenue every year. 15 of it came from the morning show. We were really friendly with sales. We did a great job, all those things. I had an intern that was our producer that was making $7 an hour. And I had to give him parts of my bonus just so he could eat. He was also a barista when he got off the air. And when he was done that, he would go change tires for a few hours at night. Then he would come back at 4:00 in the morning and do it again. He did this for 3 years. 3 years. And I'm like, you guys okay with this towards the end? I'm like, you guys okay with doing this to this poor fucker?
Yeah, they were.
They're like, yeah, that's what the industry is. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. So I started to develop a heart towards the end of my time on the radio. And I was like, this is not how it is supposed to be. We treat people absolutely terribly. Like we abuse the privilege of creativity. We abuse the privilege. And that is very specific to traditional media. It very much is, where you would tell these kids, the only way you're going to learn to do this job like me is to be on the job and to do it for free. I'll give you a chance to do that for 6 months. And then you go to your manager, you're like, okay, we got 2 free interns. You'd be like, awesome. Keep that head count down. That's awesome. And then when they got rid during the big call over the past 5-6 years, they're like, let's get rid of all the high priced talent, all of it. Right. Let's get those kids to do this job now.
And that's where
here's the thing. They all suck. They all suck at it. And they've been cutting, replacing great content, really good communicators with those people who will go, you know what, I'll S&D down at the Greyhound station for $25. I'll also do a morning show for you for the same amount. And it's like sold, because they understand, owners, managers of radio businesses and traditional media understand the same thing that guys like you, Wendy, me, Lachlan understand. Just no one cares about them anymore. No one cares about them anymore. But they did that. It's not big tech's fault. That's part of it. But they did that because they read the tea leaves wrong, and greed and collusion was way more important to some of those big cats than anything else. And the proof is in the pudding now, Wendy, isn't it? Are we seeing it? Are we kind of living it?
We're living it. I mean, I was living it. Why do you think so many broadcast journalism courses have shut down? Because the word's out there. Well, first of all, who wants to take a job where you've got some hillbilly behind you saying "fuck her in the pussy"? Who wants to take a job like that? Who wants to take a job that there is so much mistrust in the industry right now, or has been for a while, that you're not going to be respected doing a job that is paying you barely a livable wage. So first off, that's your first problem. Your second problem is the schools. I don't know what the hell schools are teaching people, but I became a very well-paid comma replacer. That's what it felt like. I was replacing commas. I was editing stories that had no grammar, no spelling. I don't know what the college is, and it does not surprise me that so many, and
they'll take anybody. I mean,
they'll take anybody for the money, and then nobody's sticking around to do the job. I mean,
I got a funny story for you. So,
do you know how long it has? There has been a vacancy, and I'm not going to name names or whatever. It's a small industry.
Come on, do it. I love it when people name names. It's my favorite thing to do.
But there has been a job vacancy in one community for almost 2 years. Nobody to fill that job. Nobody will take it.
Program director.
No, it's a news
on air.
Yeah.
I got friends who refuse to, that are down on it, and they refuse to apply for jobs. They're like, fuck it, I can't do it anymore. I forgot I was going to tell you a really great story, but now I can't remember what the great story was.
Something about an intern?
Story. Nah, I don't think so. Wendy, refresh my memory, because it was a pretty good story. What did you say just prior to me interrupting and then mocking radio school? Oh, I know what I was going to tell you. That's it, radio school. Thank you very much. I'm 51. It happens. Everybody relax.
I know. I'm 51 too.
We look good. So I get a phone call last September. Yeah, it was last September. No, it was August. It's from a college, and they're like, hey, looking for someone to kind of teach the radio program here. And I'm like,
I would sign up for that course.
So would I.
And I'm like,
back to school just for that.
Hold it back.
There's it. Oh, I did. Well, wait. Now let me take you through it. So this dude's like, what do you think? I go, what do I think about radio school? Or what do I like? Do you want me to suggest people? He goes, no, I'm asking if you might be interested. And I took the phone away from him. I'm like, so I'm like, I'm going to ferret this out. Tell me more. He's like, wow, it's a great opportunity for someone like you. So I'm like, I'm already like, okay, this guy's radio quality culture, right? Someone like you. It's a great opportunity for you. I'm telling you that this is going to be good for you without knowing what I'm doing at all, right? It's a great opportunity for you. Like you to come in and kind of head up the radio program. So now I'm going to be in charge of the radio program.
Now you're running the whole thing.
Oh my God.
Teach a few courses, but really just kind of oversee it. And then he gave me a dollar amount. And it was hilarious. Like hilarious. And he goes, but it's really good on your resume. And I go, what's enrollment like? He goes, it's down. I start laughing. I go, okay, it's down. What are you teaching them? He's like, the basics of radio, how to communicate properly, how to structure a break. I go, okay. I said, okay, I'll take the job, but I also want the job about VCR repair as well and beta repair. I'd like that job. And he's like, what do you mean? I go, you know what? Throw the record player repairman schooling into that too. I want to teach that. And he's like, what do you mean? I go, it's a dead industry, dude. Like, what am I going to teach these kids? Because the second I get into that class, you know what I'm going to tell them all? You know what I'm going to tell them all? I'll take the money. I'll take the job. I will walk into that classroom and I will go, get out.
Get out.
For 45 minutes. He goes, they're 90-minute classes. I'm like, well, then I do it for 90 minutes.
90.
Get out. Because nobody is going to teach you the basics here at all. And this industry is dead. And when you get a job, if you get a job, it'll be shit. It'll be in a shit town where you got to get 2 or 3 other jobs. And he's like, yeah, but there are a lot of people out there who really ascended to the top of their profession like you. I go, that's fucking 20 years ago. That's when it mattered. That's when no one had phones. This is when the only information you got was from radio, TV, or print. I said, dude, nobody listens to this shit anymore. Nobody. And he's like, well, I'm offended. Literally 3 months later, he quit for the same reasons. 3 months later, he quit. This is the guy that was heading up the film, radio, and television program. Then my son gets into the television and radio program at a college here. And he's like, I go, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm doing it for film, but radio is mandatory. So I go down to the school, right? To pick him up one day. Everybody comes out, says hi to me. Teacher's like, hey, dude, can you come in and like give a pep talk to these kids? So I do.
And you told them to get out.
Get out for 20 minutes. Learn to edit audio. Learn content in the digital space. Learn about algorithms. Learn about Learn. But get out of this program. Lasted 5 minutes. The guy grabs my arm. He's like, "Okay, that's enough."
That's good. Thank you. Come with me. Thank you for this. Yeah.
And it's not my anger towards the program. It's just the truth, Wendy. To your point, it's just the truth, right?
There's a bit of anger.
I used to and I don't mean to slag the journalism schools, but I hired a young man out of a journalism school. He was coming here to Stratford to train with me, and I said, I was onboarding him, paperwork and stuff, and I said to him, print your name here and put your signature here. And he looked at me and he goes, sorry, signature? And I said, sign your name here. So sorry, sign my name? I said,
oh my God.
Sign your name. The next half an hour, I taught him how to write his name. How to
what?
Cursive. I taught him cursive. He had no idea. And I am not kidding you. And I don't tell that story very often, but I'm not kidding you. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, what is going on here? And then I got talking to a few people. I don't have children, so I worked very hard my entire life not to have children. And I was
I love Wendy Gray.
She's awesome.
I was talking to people who have children, and I said, what if they go to the bank? Like, how do they sign up for a bank account? Well, as long as it's done in front of a teller, an X marks the spot. That's all they need to know.
That's insane. I got a good intern story. So my last PD job, K-Rock, K97, whatever the hell you want to call it. I was in Winnipeg, got headhunted, got brought to Edmonton, lasted 16 months there. They had a good relationship until I got there with the school at NAIT. They used to send interns on a regular basis. This kid shows up. He comes into the building, and I sort of assigned somebody to him to get him to do some jobs, and I gave a list of jobs that I wanted done to this person, and they were going to get the intern to do it. And my buddy Jason, who was, I think, the assistant promotions director at the time, comes and goes, "There's an issue. So-and-so can't do that job." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Why?" And Jason's like, "Well, he doesn't know how to type." And I said, "He's been in radio school for how long?" And this is 2007.
He can't go like this.
That's still how I type.
Doesn't know how to do
doesn't
that.
Know how to type. So I'm like, and he's not going to do the job. No, he wants something else. So I went into the room where he was sitting, and I grabbed him, and I said, "Hey, did you come with anything? Get your bag, get your coat." And I said, "Come with me. Come." And I walked to the exit, and I said, "Hey." And he goes, "What's going on?" I'm like, "Go home and go try to get your money back from radio school." I said, "If you don't know how to use a computer or type, I don't know what to do with you." And he goes, "You can't fire me. I'm here for free." And I went, "Actually, it's easier. Go get in your car."
Yeah. That's the whole idea behind those internships. Yeah.
Go home. That was the last intern they sent me.
Yeah.
That's where we're at with interns. And that was 2007.
I think it's illegal to have interns now. I think that, like, it's in certain aspects.
That was probably because of you.
Probably.
I know. I wasn't very nice to some of them. I feel terrible about it. Really. Yeah. Like, we had one intern. We did staple gun spelling bee with him. We give him words like onomatopoeia or vacuum, and we give the guy who was fighting against the word like cat or fan, and then because I just wanted to hit him with staples and get that reaction online. It was like, that's all I wanted out of the dude. And then and then we did another thing where we fed him way too much meat. It's like, Long story.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
Anyway, but do I that was the game back then.
Yeah.
Like if you understand radio, that was like, you had a minute to catch people's attention. So you did outrageously funky stuff.
Yeah.
And now everybody's like, no one's listening. Why bother? Right. That's the theory I get, because that was I
think there's also there's a fear now to do anything that would remotely put you in jeopardy of losing your job. Right. So anybody with any sort of show that steps outside of the lines, is probably going to be in trouble.
Yeah. Because the lines are just so
crazy.
Woke.
Yeah. Yeah.
They are, aren't they? I got fired for that. I was like patient zero for that too. It was like,
started that ball.
Yeah.
I know the story, Dean. I know the story. Yeah.
Do you know the story? Yeah, a lot of people in Canada know the story. It was not a lot of people. They get fired. It's not a lot. I'm pretty fortunate. That was front page news for a couple of weeks. It was like across Canada.
Well, Wendy would have known about it too, because she would have been covering that story, right?
And to that point, let me just kind of take you through that real quick. This really proves your point about collusion and the overly woke attitudes. So when I get fired, my company spent hundreds of thousands of dollars giving that money to a company called Navigator. I'm sure you're familiar with who Navigator is, to paint me as this extreme homophobe, right? Now, what do you see in news media today? A lot of that, right? This is nonstop. The kettling of, you said this, so that means you're this. It's like the Nazi dinner party bullshit, right? Oh, that means you hate all gay people if you crack a gay joke. No, it doesn't. And I didn't crack a gay joke. I made fun of a rapist, rape people. And they're like, yeah, but some gay people are really upset with you and you make a lot of money. So we're going to give a whole bunch of money to Jamie Watt at Navigator. Jeff Ballingall was there at the time. He's currently suing me as well. It's the best from Canada Proud. And the whole idea behind it was, how can we turn this into reputational Armageddon for this man who's made us millions and millions of dollars? Because we don't want people complaining to us, and we don't want people suggesting that we're not what we want to be, right? They go after clients to do all that stuff. And the lack of spine during that whole process in media grossed me out to the point where I refused to work for anybody like that again. And I had, our CEO, John, come basically give me the entire backstory. So what I'm telling you actually comes from the former head of HR, comes from our CEO. He's like, hey, it's just business. That's what he said. It's just business. And I go, dude, it's just my fucking life. Like, you just destroyed my fucking life. And it hasn't taken me a couple years to get back. We're at 10. We're at a decade. The decade of damage that these people have delivered on me and my family, all because it's just business in media. And they do it to everybody. They don't care.
I know.
They don't care.
No.
Media in Canada is organized fucking crime. Specifically big media in this country. It is organized fucking crime that works hand in hand with local government, provincial government, federal government. And the second you become a problem for them, that is the only thing they give a shit about, is how do we put a bullet in that guy, these people, those people. Guess what? The fucking watershed's here, Wendy. Lachlan, the watershed's here. We are bigger than them. People trust us more than them because we don't steal government money and fire human beings. Because we can literally stand on our bias, and our bias is, yeah, they're all corrupt. We're not. And that is the truth. That is the truth. And I can sit here and I can talk about it. And my power and your power, Wendy, you know where it comes from? Lachlan's power. It doesn't come from what you did. It doesn't come from the person you were in this job that you had. That was your identity for a long period. That was my identity for a long time. It comes from giving yourself that agency. And there are a lot of people left and right, hillbillies, wokesters. There are a lot of people out there that go, we don't trust any of them either, right? So all we do is we feed trust into those communities now. We feed hope into those communities. We listen to everybody. And the other thing is, we don't fuck people over because, I'd like to make an extra couple million for some shareholders here. We don't do that. We can't do that because we don't have that kind of money. So it prevents us from being financial assholes. But media in this country, and to your point, all of these things in a big blender, they did this to themselves. And they lost a beautiful fucking employee in Wendy Gray. They lost a wonderful impact broadcaster in Lachlan Cross. And here's the thing, is they've radicalized me into telling all of their stories, into talking about how corrupt that industry is against the people who own their licenses. So unless we all decide to do something like this, they're going to continue to get away with it, and they're not going to get away with it because they're broke and they're valueless and they have no virtues. Zero. So I'm really glad I got a chance to talk to you about this industry today, Wendy. I really, really am. I really am. Because you have values, right? And you can't trade those values. You can't, because you'll be just like them. Just like them.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, it's become the kind of industry that you don't know who's telling the truth, who isn't telling the truth, who's blowing it up to get hits, to get ears, to get eyeballs. It really has. Yeah. It's funny. My partner, big Twitter fan, bit right. He'll say to me, even now that I'm out of the industry, because he knows I still consume news, and he'll say to me, he'll see something on Twitter or X or whatever in the heck they're calling it, and he'll say, "Have you heard about this? Do you know if this is true?" And I'll say to him, "Oh my God, no, it's not true. It's just somebody on Twitter blowing it up, you know." So I'm actually his fact checker. I mean, I know Fact Check IO for you guys is a big thing, but I'm his fact checker, because otherwise he won't pay attention to the news because he doesn't trust it.
Of course you don't. And you can't trust it when it comes from, and here's the thing. There's no standard for that trust. There's no standard for that trust in a post-truth society, which is what we live in. And now everybody floods the zone because they're like, okay, you know, I don't know if you know this, trust in mainstream media in Canada used to be like 5 years ago, it was like 58%, 59%, decent number, right? Do you know what it is today?
It's like
22.
30. Oh, 22.
No.
I was going to say 31.
22% trust in independent media. And keep in mind, I mean, you know, everything's so segmented now. Trust in independent media, that goes for everybody from us to Rebel News, right? Hill Times to someone who's not attached to any of those assholes. 70%.
Wow.
And so, to your point, your partner's going to believe anything out there that, because he does not trust mainstream media. He puts all his faith in other independent media outlets, and that has filled the void. That has absolutely filled the void. And it's very difficult for people, even in our situation, to maintain the business that we have financially, because we tell the truth. Because we'll talk to people who other people will go, that guy's a Nazi, that guy's a racist, that guy's this, that guy's that person's this. Like, well, I'm going to fucking find out for myself, because that's what journalism used to be for me, right? Is a conversation with somebody about what they do, what they're talking about, as opposed to the caging of someone's community into this, like, oh, you're just this, you're just that. Like, and so now we're all kind of running around going, well, I don't believe it if it doesn't come from these people, right? And mainstream media is dead. And to your point, this is the result. You know, you take government money, no one believes you. You lie enough, no one believes you. You give dividends to people while firing employees that work their dicks off for 25 years in copy, and you don't give them proper severance. You give that government money to yourselves and your friends. No one's going to believe you. No one's going to trust you. And that's kind of the benefit of the internet, to be honest with you. You know, like, people shit on social media, people shit on media, people shit on the internet, people shit on big tech. Anybody can flood the zone with information. We get it. I totally understand that. But the benefit, I think, to every single person is the internet uncovers as much as it does cover up, right? Is that you can get an unfettered look at someone's opinion, something that just happened on Twitter. It doesn't have to go through those filters of mainstream media and whatever it was that they thought they were. Now we're like, we don't believe that. because here's the truth over here, and it happened in less than 5 seconds. You guys haven't reported on it, and your version of that story is completely different and slanted to your culture. That's what the National Post is, right? That's what the Sun is. That is what the Toronto Star are. They are people that are chasing their fucking tails because they have lied to us for generations. Kind of the bottom line, isn't it?
Yep. Yeah.
It's also the birth of guys like Trump and the politics we have of today as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Not that we should open up that can of worms because we've already.
Do you know what? Do you know my brother? My brother's like, start a podcast, start interviewing politicians. You know enough politicians. You got their phone numbers in your phone. Start a podcast. Nobody watches television. Nobody listens to the radio. Oh my gosh. I can't even talk to him anymore. I'm like, I can't, let me get over this hump of PTSD and then maybe I'll think about it, but not right now.
How are you doing?
I'm good.
How's your health today? Are you okay?
Yeah, no, I am much better. I feel so much better.
Good.
In fact, I think my shrink thinks I'm amazing because he hasn't seen anybody wean themselves off the meds. I didn't like it.
Did you get the head buzzes? Did you get the head buzzes? Yeah. I had those for 6 months because I just stopped like an idiot. It was the best.
No, I'm doing so much better now. So much better. Healthy, happy, Yep. Living.
Walking the dog.
Walking the dog, yeah. Walking the dog at night because nobody's threatening me anymore. Speaking of
Wendy,
dog.
This has been awesome. I gotta thank you. I called Dean when you reached out and I said because we sometimes get in our own heads a bit about the inside baseball stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're trying to be more than just this podcast that, brings up our glory days, every.
Although I would like to bring up my glory days even more, actually. I think that was a lot of fun. Everybody how cool I am.
But I think people are interested in why we are where we are at. And it's also hard to complain about this business, right? Like I always felt like complaining about my job. Like, wow, I had to get up early this morning and I drank too much last night. The guy's on a roof. It's -30.
Yeah.
He's ready to drive down to the radio station, drag me out of the booth. Yeah. Give me a dose of a real job. Anyway, but I really appreciate your time and we'll definitely have you back. Your insight into how, where the industry is at and the state of news and how people consume news is very interesting, especially considering you still have sort of a positive slant on this. And I think that's how you and I connected because I think you were surprised that, after being shit canned, I was still saying this is a good business. There's something here. It's just being run poorly, right? And that's how it came together. Yeah.
And I think, the future of radio is not Bell, Rogers, or Chorus. The future of radio is the My Broadcasting Corporation, the Vistas of the world, the Pattison Medias of the world. Oh, well, Pattison's cut a lot too, but it just, they have to staff it.
Those little guys need to take it back.
Yeah. They need to take it back. I think there's viability there, but they need to staff it and they need to pay it.
Yeah.
And you know what? Because all of these schools are dropping courses. Hey, how about Pattison, Vista, My Broadcasting, all of these little, and I shouldn't say little independents, they're becoming huge now, but all of these independent companies, why don't we start a school? Start training journalists. Start hiring Dean Blendells to do a great break or Laughlin's. Well, okay, that's a stretch.
Dean, maybe not Dean.
Yeah, maybe not Dean.
Hire Dean to teach the youth of today.
but do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Let's teach them radio.
Get back to the grassroots.
Yeah.
You know what? There's even a better idea, Wendy. Screw school. Have overnights. Have live overnights again. Like, I mean, I saw the death of our industry when we started like voice tracking, right? When I realized that Andy Frost was on 50 radio stations.
Yep.
I'm like, it's over. It's over. We're killing ourselves.
Or when we can't even run weather forecasts overnight because there's nobody in the building past 5 o'clock.
We're going to get AI to do that, Wendy.
Yeah, AIs, DJ
AIs.
Pro 8000, yeah.
Great. Yeah, for sure.
Really good. Yeah.
Anyways, guys, I have to run.
Yeah, appreciate you. Great to meet you, Wendy Gray. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. We'll talk to you soon. Wendy Gray, former broadcaster. Shh. chopping it up with us today. A lovely lady. Smart
That was
gal.
awesome. Yeah. I knew you'd like
It's
that.
not really, we didn't get too grievancy.
No, but
Industry
I
sucks.
understand whenever we have one of these in front of us, you and I have the same concerns. Do people want to hear us talk for an hour and 30, 45 minutes about our business, right? But I think they do, because there's more to it than just a couple of old school radio guys, talking about what they used to do.
Yeah. Dude, there are a lot of those podcasts
that.
out there. Yeah, there's some, and they're not well attended podcasts. I'll tell you that. Guys going, oh, my boss was a dick.
Yeah.
I deserve better. Remember when we?
Yeah, and I desperately am trying not to live there, right, with my situation. So, and I actually think that a big part of the reason why I'm not so negative is because I have this to get up to every morning, and I appreciate that. We got to get out, but can we do the retro replay of the day?
We'll get to Umar Zamir's insane story tomorrow on the podcast. We'll put that. We'll park that. The story's crazy, but yes, time for the locker room retro replay of the day. Only 3 minutes, but it's a good one. What do you have for us on behalf of our friends at Ardent Roof Systems, Locke?
Yeah, this was, by the way, sign up for the golf tournament by going to the webpage, ardentroofsystems.com. We will see you at the tournament July 5th, the ranch, great cause, Stollery Child Life Program. This is a little bit of confusion I have with a word we were using on the air. And, I may or may not have gotten in trouble for the use of the word as well.
The Lock Retro Replay.
I grew up very differently from a lot of people. I was raised by hippies. I had a weird upbringing.
Grew up in a van. Yeah, just strange upbringing.
So I get that I might not be the best judge of this. But occasionally, and most times when somebody says, hey, that was offensive or whatever, I'll take a step back and go,
was it?
Okay, yeah, I can see that. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't have been talking.
A couple times you've said stuff and Jimmy and I are like, yeah, that's actually pretty offensive. You probably shouldn't say that. And then you'll think about it and you're like, oh, I guess it is, yeah.
There was a discussion this morning that we avoided because you guys are terrified that we're going to get fired if I talk about it.
Yep.
When you said it, you had a look of panic on your face.
Yep.
I realized we shouldn't have that conversation on the air. Let's move on. I'll take that off of the list of things to talk about. This is strange to me, and you guys know what I'm talking about. Do people find the word penis offensive?
I think so, yeah.
What?
I do. To me, it's a harsh word. When I hear it, I cringe. And I know it's the technical term and everything, but I don't know why. Just for some reason, I cringe when I hear it.
I totally agree, because growing up, never heard that word until high school.
Yeah, that's true.
Junior high.
What?
It was always like
no one
dinger
ever
or
wiener,
pee or wiener
dink.
or
like those words are softer to me.
To me, dink is harsher than penis.
Yeah, see, and it's funny to use this word. It sounds softer to me. It really does, though. Like it's not when I hear penis, it's like, ooh, that's abrupt. That cuts through. It cuts through, and I hear it. Yeah, it stands out.
Oh, okay.
I don't know why, because it is the technical term.
All right, I just because somebody commented, because we run promos on the weekend, right?
Yeah, so it'd be like, here's what you missed on the locker room.
Yeah, then tune in on Monday. They'll be back.
Yeah.
We haven't fired them yet. Right? We had a line in one of the breaks we did last week where we were talking about penis, or I said it.
You said the word, yeah.
And then we ran it on the weekend, and there was some comments that it was harsh. I don't know.
It is. Like,
is
it's,
it?
I think so, yeah.
I don't.
Especially with the fact that we do have lady listeners, and some of them do get offended by words like that as well.
Like if you would have said your willy or your wang
or your dinger, like you use quite often.
Yeah, your pecker.
See, pecker sounds more offensive to me
that's
than
pretty good.
penis. I don't know. Like
your
baloney
pony. Like those wouldn't be as.
I've never heard.
Penis makes you stand like penis catches your attention.
Baloney pony. I have to be done now.
How many different expressions can we use for that word right now?
I don't know, but I'm going to be calling it my baloney pony from now on.
Love stick. That's a good one.
Right into Gowan. Your criminal mind
Music choices.
is all I It's worth not being in radio just so you never have to fucking play Gowan
again. If you're a music programmer or you're in charge of a music playlist, and you wake up one morning and you go, we got to make sure we get some Gowan in today to enter. Just literally, it's over. Yeah, like it's over. Quit. Just give up right now. Like if Strange Animal is something that you think should be played on any rotation, on any radio station,
I can follow.
Anyway, all right.
That and Corey Hart.
Corey Hart can take a bullet.
And anything
too.
by Honeymoon Suite.
Yeah,
Felix can fuck off too.
Streetheart. Put Streetheart in there. Like add Streetheart.
You know what I wish we could do? I wish we could go back in time to prevent certain Canadian bands from ever producing a record. You know how they say you go back in time, you can't fuck with the timeline? I would fuck with Canadian rock and roll from like 1980 to like 2000.
You got to push into the into the late 70s because you got to kill Rush too. I'm sorry.
Ooh, I don't know if I could.
Yeah, you can. Yeah,
I don't know. I know Alex. He's so nice.
Doesn't mean we have to hear it.
I don't know.
You should get Alex on, and we should
like the Guess Who.
How much we hate his band.
I could legitimately have lived a better life and been a happier person without knowing the Guess Who existed. Seriously.
These eyes. Come on, man.
No, forget it. Forget it.
All right.
I think it's just because we've been fucking force fed that shit for so long. Anyway, it's 2 hours. I got to go.
That was a good one.
Good tilt.
It was intense. I'm glad we got a chance to meet Wendy.
You know, anytime we get a chance to legitimize the extreme dumps we take on that industry, I'm a happy guy. Thanks for doing this today, Lachlan Cross. Find him and The Locker Room anywhere you get YouTube. You get The Locker Room on YouTube. Sub to his YouTube feed. You can also find him on Twitter at Lachlan Cross on social media, anywhere you get Lachlan Cross, Facebook as well. Thanks to Wendy Gray for joining us as well. Thank you for spending some time with us. We really appreciate it. As always, we're brought to you by our good friends at Muse Massage Spa. Listen, my friends at Muse are giving you a deal. MuseMassageSpa.com. What's that deal? You got to email them. Go to MuseMassageSpa.com. Ask for the Dean deal. I haven't had the deal. It's just a deal that they're extending to you on my behalf. So you go to Muse Massage Spa, go to the contact section, email Emily or Riley, and they'll give you the Dean deal. It's Body Rub Parlor, 1290 Finch Avenue West, Unit 13, Toronto, Ontario, MuseMassageSpa.com. And they've also got an incredible podcast called Muse on the Mic. Now, where can you get it? Patreon. That's where it's uncensored. YouTube as well. We're currently working on aspects of their podcast because in their supreme wisdom, Spotify decided it was too spicy for them, even though they have podcasts where Joe Rogan talks about blowing himself. So we're going to try and get that figured out for them. But you won't find two nicer women, two better individuals, two greater entrepreneurs in this game, and the more trustworthy educational experts when it comes to the sex work industry, advocate and sexologists, and their podcast is outstanding. I suggest you sub to their YouTube. Also suggest you sub to their Patreon, Muse on the Mic, Muse on the Mic, wherever you get the video version. Lovely ladies, very pretty, very smart, very educational. Check them out in line, and you can check them out at their location. Go to MuseMassageSpa.com for more details. Also brought to you by our friends at CanTorque, making of rugged, hardworking torque wrenches in the leading industrial tool experts, giving you the very best in sales, service, rentals, calibration, maintenance, and custom fabrication of industrial torque tools. Colin's awesome. He's also part of the Tagliani Pinty's NASCAR racing team. CanTorque is a sponsor. He races, and you can listen to that podcast. He's actually got Alex on it quite a bit. If you go to the CanTorque website, which is brand new, it looks awesome. Unbelievable new website. You can check out their products, services, news, and podcasts, and you can also see what they do and what they can do for you, which they've been doing for heavy industry around the world for the past 20 years, from tools, rentals, calibration, services, repairs, custom fabrication, and distribution opportunities. CanTorque offers you a complete range of services, products, making them your one-stop destination for all your bolting needs, saving you time, effort, and hassle. CanTorque.com today for more information. And as always, brought to you by FactCheck, FAKTCHEK.io. FactCheck.io is disinformation killing software created by data scientists, computer scientists, evolutionary psychologists, and people who give a shit about the news that you read. and consume. We just did an entire podcast on it. So make sure you join their beta test team. Today, you can become a fact check verified fact checker. Go to factcheck.io for more details. Sign up there. You can also check them out at Crier Media. You've got an entire section dedicated to that. So go there today, but sign up for their beta test because they're going to be launching in the next couple of months. And I have tested this, and man, oh man, it's insane. Everything from, the authenticity of the social media accounts that are praising certain information to the actual epistemology of where that information comes from. Factcheck.io gets all of it and then some, and then lets you decide whether or not you want to proceed and lets you decide whether or not you want other sources. And then it grades it. It grades the account, the people, and the originality of where it came from. Sentiment is hard to find. Fact Check's been able to figure it out. Go to factcheck.io for more details. Have a great day, everybody. Appreciate you being here. You can get everything we do. Crier Media, YouTube, Dean Blundell, YouTube, Crier Media. Go to crier.co for all the details on every single one of our shows and every single podcast in the network, including Scouting the Refs. Todd Lewis, brilliant podcast. All they do is talk about the referees from NHL games, including the playoffs. Unbelievable. Anyway, check them out. Go and sub to that as well. Use on the mic, as well as others. Crier.co. Check them out today. Have a great day. Thanks to Lachlan. Thanks to Wendy. Thanks to you for spending time with us. Always appreciate it because you can get more stuff. You can never get more time. So thanks for giving that to us today. Have a great day. See you tomorrow, everybody. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.